You wake up, you reach over for your phone, and nothing. Crickets.
Yep. The absolute worst feeling.
It really is. That text you sent last night is still completely unanswered. And before your feet even hit the floor, you've already got that, that familiar tight knot in your chest.
Oh, yeah. The day hasn't even started and you're already spiraling.
Exactly. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're pulling apart a really fascinating set of personal notes titled The Architecture of Emotional Recovery. And our mission for you today is decoding a highly counterintuitive, yet intensely practical shortcut to stopping that exact morning anxiety spiral.
It's such a great set of nights. It's really a look at how we completely mismanage our internal energy. Because, I mean, the default instinct for most of us is to try and, solve our uncomfortable feelings right away.
Right, like it's a math problem or something.
Exactly. We treat these raw emotions like puzzles that just have to be cracked right then and there. But the shift we're exploring today moves completely away from that exhausting approach and, well, towards something entirely different.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we all know that feeling, right? That immediate urge to just overthink the digital silence and let it totally dictate your entire morning. To really get why this alternative approach matters, we have to look at the trap most of us fall into.
The old pattern, yeah.
Right, the old pattern. These notes highlight a sequence we all know way too well. That unanswered text doesn't just sit there as a neutral fact. It triggers this immediate obsessive loop.
Right. Because the mind spins up a narrative almost instantly. It starts with simple curiosity, like, oh, what's she doing right now? But it quickly devolves.
Oh, it goes off a cliff.
It really does. It turns into, well, should I send a casual follow-up text to bump the conversation? Why hasn't she replied? Did I say something wrong? Is the whole relationship broken? It just escalates from a missing piece of digital communication to a perceived relationship crisis in, a matter of seconds.
It's a full-on mental hijack. Your body is physically reacting, your heart rate goes up, your stomach drops, and it's all over a completely blank screen.
It's exhausting.
Yeah.
But the breakthrough detailed in these notes happens when the person caught in this loop recognizes a new pattern emerging.
Right.
Instead of fighting the anxiety or, forcefully shoving it down, they realize the emotion was just being put into a mental queue, like a waiting line to be processed later. The thought organically popped up like, hey, wait, let me finish this task first.
Which is huge. And we really need to pause on that distinction because cueing an emotion is fundamentally different from suppressing it.
Totally different. When you suppress an emotion, you're actively fighting it. You're basically yelling at your brain, don't think about the text. Stop worrying about the text.
Which ironically just forces you to keep thinking about the freaking text.
Exactly. It burns a massive amount of cognitive energy. You are still actively engaging with the threat. But when an emotion is cued, it doesn't just, disappear. It's still there in the room with you, but it loses its priority status.
It steps out of the spotlight.
Right. It becomes something that can be delayed, which means it fails to immediately hijack your attention. The whole morning doesn't have to grind to a halt just because the emotion exists.
That actually makes me think of managing windows on a computer.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. So when you've got a program that just freezes up or it starts demanding all your system's RAM, that's the intense emotion. And our usual instinct is to desperately try to force quit the application.
Just mash the buttons until it closes.
Exactly. We try to kill the emotion so we can get our computer running smoothly again.
And force quitting often just makes the whole operating system freeze, or at least it stutters terribly while it tries to resolve the conflict.
Yeah, the screen goes gray, the little beach ball starts spinning. But what's happening here isn't force quitting, it's just, hitting the minimize button. The program is still running in the background, right? The emotion is still technically there, but the window is minimized so you can actually focus on another app on your desktop.
That's a really great way to visualize the cue.
But wait, let me push back on this a bit. Doesn't putting an intense emotional issue on hold just make it bubble up and explode later? Are we just talking about avoidance here?
What's fascinating here is that the notes specifically address why this isn't avoidance and why true recovery is actually not about figuring things out.
Really?
Yeah. It runs counter to a lot of popular psychology. But if you sit there and overanalyze the relationship to find a logical solution to the silence, it almost always backfires.
Because you're treating a raw emotional reaction like a math equation that can be balanced.
Yes. You end up feeding energy into the very emotion you're trying to resolve.
Yeah.
You're keeping it maximized on your mental desktop, to use your analogy. Every time you try to analyze it, you're telling your amygdala, the threat center of your brain, that this is a high priority emergency.
You're sounding the alarm over and over.
Exactly. By simply delaying the emotion, you strip it of its immediate power over your nervous system. You aren't saying, I'll never deal with this. You're saying, I'm not dealing with this right now.
So it's really about removing the urgency.
That lack of immediate urgency is key. It prevents the nervous system from sustaining a full fight-or-flight response. And the problem doesn't explode later because without that constant feed of panicked attention, the emotional intensity just naturally decays over time.
It fizzles out.
Yeah. By the time you actually check back in on the minimized window, it's usually barely using any RAM at all.
Okay, so if the strategy isn't avoiding the emotion, and it's definitely not analyzing it to death, what's the alternative? How do we actually hit that minimize button on a bad morning?
Well, this brings us to the actual mechanics of restructuring our psychological state.
Right, moving from emotion-driven to task-driven.
Exactly. And the way this is achieved is through a very exact, fixed rhythm to start the day. So instead of lying in bed ruminating, the focus shifts to a sequence of deliberate, pre-planned actions.
Yeah, and the notes lay out a routine that is almost aggressively mundane.
It really is.
It's listening to an English podcast for exactly 18 minutes, eating breakfast, opening the computer for work, checking the previous night's data, making a to-do list to solve things step by step. I mean, it's just a sequence of normal, everyday actions. But reading between the lines, it seems like the specific actions matter way less than the fact that they are structured.
That's spot on. It seems mundane, but those normal actions represent a massive psychological paradigm shift. Think about the old sequence of how a spiraling mind works. Emotion strikes first.
Boom! The unanswered text.
Right. That emotion then captures your attention. And finally, that captured attention dictates your behavior.
Okay, so the anxiety over the text is the emotion. It captures your attention completely, and your resulting behavior is just like lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, completely paralyzed. You might pick up your phone, put it down, pace around the room. The emotion is steering the ship.
But this new sequence flips that entirely. It starts with behavior, just doing the tasks. Engaging in that behavior causes attention to stabilize, and once your attention is stabilized, the emotion naturally settles.
Behavior, then attention, then emotion.
Yes. The notes call this letting the life structure run first.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because you can think of this like a train. Usually, we let emotion act as the engine of the train. It's up there at the very front, just pulling our attention along the tracks. And our behavior is just the caboose, getting dragged blindly behind wherever the emotion decides to go.
That's a perfect way to visualize it. When emotion is the engine, the destination is completely unpredictable.
Exactly. So what this morning routine does is essentially uncouple the train cars. You walk to the back, you grab behavior, and you put that at the front as the new engine. Behavior pulls the train now, regardless of what the emotion is doing in the back.
And the implications of that for you listening are huge. What's happening when someone eats breakfast, checks data, and listens to an 18-minute podcast is the building of a sturdy life structure.
A scaffolding.
Right? These mundane, rhythmic tasks create a stabilizing scaffolding for the mind. It's a container.
But how does that scaffolding actually calm the anxiety, though? Like, why does making a to-do list make you care less about the unreturned text?
Because when you let that structure run, when you just go through the physical motions of your routine, the predictability of the behavior signals to your primitive brain that there is no immediate emergency.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if there were a literal tiger in the room, you wouldn't be calmly eating oatmeal and checking spreadsheets, right?
You'd be running for your life.
Exactly. By doing those calm things, you allow the nervous system to feel safe. It stops hyperfixating on the emotional threat. The emotion isn't occupying the entire room anymore. It just finds a quiet corner to sit in while the structure of your life takes up the main space.
It makes total sense in theory. But I think anyone listening right now is probably wondering about the friction of actually doing it.
Oh, sure.
Because when you're in the middle of a massive anxiety spike, decoupling that train is incredibly hard. Your brain doesn't want to make a to-do list. It wants to obsess. It feels like you're trying to lift 100 pounds of mental weight just to get out of bed.
The friction is absolutely real. The internal resistance can be overwhelming. But this is perhaps the most practical takeaway from the notes. They identify a precise threshold of action required to flip the switch. True emotional recovery doesn't happen before you start moving.
You don't just wait until you feel better to start your day.
Right. The recovery comes after starting to do things.
And the required time frame the author found is astonishingly short. 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes of action.
Well, it could be reading a book, working out, learning something new, or finally processing a task you've been procrastinating on. The specific task matters less than the cognitive demand it requires.
Yeah, the notes mention that once you engage in one of those activating tasks, there's an actual biological and cognitive shift. The brain switches out of its emotion system and directly into its execution system.
Yes.
And this connects deeply to a concept highlighted in the notes from a book called Energy Management. The core idea there is that energy isn't managed by suppressing it, it's managed by rhythmic switching.
Rhythmic switching. Yes. Think about how professional athletes train. They don't just run indefinitely until they collapse. They exert intense energy and then they recover. It's an oscillation.
An ebb and flow.
Exactly. And the same applies to our mental and emotional state. If you stay locked in the emotion system, you're constantly burning energy on an open loop. But by switching to the execution system, you enter a different rhythm of action that physically causes the emotions to lose their priority status in the brain.
So what does this all mean for a normal person on a Tuesday morning? I have to ask, is it really that simple? Can just 5 minutes of answering emails or doing some push-ups literally flip a hardwired switch in our brain from emotion mode to execution mode? I mean, it sounds a bit like magic.
This raises an important question because it does sound almost too easy, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's not magic. It really just comes down to the strict limits of how our brains allocate resources. We only have so much working memory. When we're caught up in the emotion system, our cognitive resources are being burned on abstract anxieties, things we can't control, like what someone else is thinking or why they haven't texted back.
Which is a completely unsolvable problem. You could spend 10 hours on it and be no closer to a real answer.
Yes. And the brain will keep trying to solve it anyway, which completely drains you. But the execution system is concrete. When you take immediate, tangible action, even for just 5 minutes, you are forcing your brain to reallocate its limited cognitive resources.
You're giving it a real problem to solve.
Exactly. You simply cannot intensely focus on drafting a coherent work email or calculating data in a spreadsheet while simultaneously running a complex, abstract background simulation of why your relationship might be failing.
The brain has limited bandwidth. It has to drop one of them.
Precisely. It has to choose. And by choosing the tangible task, you're proving to your nervous system that energy management isn't about fighting the emotion, it's about creating forward momentum. That rhythm of action literally starves the anxiety of the cognitive fuel it needs to keep spiraling.
Wow.
Now, yeah, the first 60 seconds might be agonizing. Your brain will definitely want to snap back to the text message, but if you hold the line for 5 minutes, the execution system takes over.
That's a massive shift in perspective. It goes against almost everything we're taught about needing to just, sit with our feelings and process every little anxiety. To synthesize everything we've pulled from these notes today, the ultimate conclusion here is that we need to fundamentally stop trying to control our emotions.
It's a losing battle.
Right. It just drains our energy. Instead, we have to focus entirely on prioritizing starting our lives. Just start the engine of your behavior. Once the life structure starts running, once you're in the rhythm of your tangible tasks, those overwhelming emotions naturally recede into the background where they belong.
It's such a practical approach to an everyday problem. And I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over, building on what we've discussed about this execution system. If simply engaging our execution system through a 5-minute to-do list can sideline intense relationship anxiety, well, what happens if we intentionally design our daily routines, our life structures, to be so consistently engaging that our emotion system rarely gets the chance to needlessly take the wheel in the first place? Could our boring daily chores actually be our greatest emotional shield?
That is a fascinating question. So next time you're staring at an empty text thread, just remember, you don't need to fix the feeling. You just need to minimize the window and go make breakfast. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of your own mind. We'll catch you on the next one.